when you first arrive at the client's house and knock on the door and they answer and you greet them and go sit down at the kitchen table, a lot of you, especially if you're new, that's a really nervous time for you. You know, how am I going to handle this appointment? What product am I going to use? Like, how am I going to present it to them? But I want to make sure that you have the proper mindset and understanding that when we do training on these particular subjects, that you want to take the training literally. In other words, when you watch it, don't take bits and pieces of it and say, well, I like the way this sounds, I don't like the way this sounds. You want to make sure you follow the training to the T, because one thing I can assure you is this: all the training we're providing for you has been tested and tried. Like we've been out there, we've skinned our knees up, we know what works, we know what doesn't work. So I would challenge each and every one of you to make sure that you follow it to the letter, and I assure you that you'll get phenomenal results. It's key when you get into the house that you always want to take control right away, okay? And what I mean by that is you want to make sure, first of all, that you're prepared for the appointment. You know, you don't want to be fidgeting with papers. Make sure that you have everything lined up. You have your briefcase in your hand. You have the lead request that they sent in, and greet them with a smile at the door. And then you want to head off. You always want to head to the kitchen table. It's easier to conduct business there than it would be sitting in the living room. In this video, we're going to walk you through a scenario of how to handle an in-home presentation, how to properly conduct yourself, what questions you need to ask the client when you meet with them, and kind of go through that entire process with them step by step. Well, Marissa and Jeremiah, it's good to meet you guys. How long have you lived here in the area? A long time, or?
Yeah,
about 10 years.
About 10 years. Did you both grow up here?
we kind of both moved to the area.
Okay. And you have 2 children?
2 kids.
do.
And they're how old?
6 and 4.
6 and 4. Okay. That's a fun age, that's for sure. I miss when mine were that age. Well, I'll kind of get right down to it.
Okay.
Obviously, you guys know why I stopped out. This is the request that you had submitted.
Okay.
Your loan was $180,000, and you had your age is 33, and you're 6'205" and a non-smoker. And then Marissa, you had your height is 5'4", your weight is 125, non-smoker also, and you're 31. And that's your signature there on the bottom?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm assuming if you guys are like most people I meet with every day, if something were to happen to either one of you, you just simply want the house paid off. Is that your main concern?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm what they call a field underwriter. So I deal with a handful of different insurance companies. Some of them you're probably very familiar with. You've probably heard of Mutual of Omaha before, or Transamerica.
Yeah.
We deal with a bunch. There's no physical exam with our products, which is why I'm at your house. That means I don't have to send a nurse out to draw blood and go through that whole mess, okay? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you both some questions, all right? I'm going to give you this disclaimer up front. I'm not trying to be nosy. I'm just trying to help you, okay? And my commitment to you two would be this. If I don't feel like this is something that makes sense for you, I'll tell you I don't think you should do it. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. All right. I want to start off by asking Jeremiah, you this question first. How much income do you typically bring in every month outside of Marissa, just you by yourself?
About 5,000.
5,000 net in your account every month. And Marissa, what do you bring in outside of Jeremiah?
Nothing. I stay at home.
Okay. That is definitely, my wife does that too, so it's a big job.
Yes.
I don't think you could pay her enough
No.
to do that. I know I wouldn't want to do it. Do you have any life insurance at all currently?
I have some through work. I think it's 100,000.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any coverage outside of work?
No.
Okay. I'm not going to count your work insurance just simply because you don't own the policy.
Okay.
Meaning that if you leave there or they decide to get rid of you because they don't like you anymore, you would lose that. So I only count what you own. Now, Marissa, do you have any coverage at all?
no.
Okay. Any health issues with either one of you? Any cancer, heart issues?
No.
No.
Do you guys take medication for anything?
No.
Okay. So basically, if something, I just want to make sure I have this right. If you were to pass away tomorrow, you're telling me that this 5,000 would completely stop. Is that correct? In
Yeah.
other words, Marissa's income would be 0.
Right.
Okay. I can see why you have me here then. So you definitely want to make sure Marissa's taken care of. The question is, do you, Marissa, want to make sure also that Jeremiah is taken care of also?
I mean, it's something we haven't really talked about, but
Okay, one thing to think about is this. Even though you don't earn a paycheck, technically if you got cancer and passed away, it's going to cost Jeremiah money because he'd have to have somebody help take care of the kids and deal with all that stuff too. So I'll go ahead and look at both of you.
Okay.
You know, obviously you need to take care of it, but I'll look at both of you.
Okay.
Okay. And what was your occupation, Jeremiah? What do you do?
I'm in IT.
IT.
Yeah.
Okay. How long have you been doing that?
Last 6 years.
6 years. Okay. All right. Well, here's what I'm going to do at this point. I'm going to look at a couple different options, see what I can come up with, and then we'll go from there. Is
Okay.
that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys big savers? Like, do you save a lot of money?
I'd say we're pretty
fair. Probably not as much as we should.
What is your mortgage payment with taxes and insurance all put together?
good. Like 1,600, somewhere in there.
1,600. Okay. And you said you don't put any extra on the loan at this point?
At this point, we don't. We did before we had kids.
That will definitely stop that from happening.
Yeah, it slows down a little bit.
Jeremiah and Marissa, here's the options that would be available. Okay, I'm going to look at yours first. All right.
Okay.
Jeremiah, on option number 1, we would do 180,000 in coverage. Here's what that means: if you were to pass, Marissa would get a tax-free check for 180,000 to pay off the loan. Okay. It's 121.75 a month, but at the end of the 20 years, the insurance company would refund you back $29,220 even. Okay?
Okay.
And the reason I set it up on 20 years is think in terms of if this represents today and this is 30 years, the goal would be, obviously, if you can, you want to pay your house off sooner than that.
Right.
So if we set it up for 20 years, at the end of the 20, you get the refund, you could use those funds to in turn pay the house off ahead of time. Okay?
Gotcha.
So option 1 would be with the return of 29,000 at this premium. Option 2 would be we don't do a return. We just make sure Marissa's covered and that's it. It's 3706.
Okay.
Again, if you pass, she gets a check tax-free for 180,000 bucks. Okay? If I did the same exact thing, Marissa, on your end, if we did the 180, it's 7122 a month. Your refund would be 17,092.80, and the premium again would be 7122. But if you pass, then Jeremiah, you'd get a tax-free check for 180. The other option would be you don't do a return with option 2, Marissa. It's 2507.
Okay.
Meaning if you pass, it's paid. Okay. No return. My question really to the two of you would be, you know, obviously from a protection standpoint in terms of making sure the loan is covered, and also from a budget standpoint, which is important, which of these options would make the most sense in your situation?
I mean, I like the full coverage.
I do too, but I feel like as far as our budget,
Yeah.
number 2 might be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Option 2 probably would be closer to what our budget could afford at
And
this
that's,
point.
yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, you don't want to take on more than you can. And understand this too. We can start with option 2, okay? And if things free up and you have more money coming in and you decide you'd rather move up to here later, we can always look at that another time. Okay? Now, do you feel the same way on Marissa also?
Yeah, I mean, probably. I mean, it's something we can still talk about. I mean, I don't know if we're
Yeah.
ready to make a decision today.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk about it a little bit more. I'm not sure we can afford it for both of us.
Here's what I would tell you if you guys were dear friends of mine. I would say this: you're bringing in $5,000 a month. I'm not discrediting you at all, but you're not bringing in any cash at this point. It is what it is. Let's focus just on you covering the loan first. Okay. That way, if something happens, Marissa's covered just because there's so much risk with you bringing in the quantity of money you do. And we can always look at Marissa's later, okay?
Okay.
That sound fair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What we'll do is go ahead and grab your driver's license. I'm going to go through and ask you some questions, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. That sounds good.
The first point I really wanted to cover was the We already have insurance. Okay. You're going to hear that often. And a lot of times what you do is you always want to keep in mind that they filled the form out. So in other words, they were looking for help when they sent it in. So when you go into the house, regardless of how much insurance they have, it could be 50,000, it could be 100,000, $500,000, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, you're going in and letting them know, hey, I'm here to protect the mortgage. You know, that's your life insurance, and I try to separate the two. So in other words, you have life insurance that's designed to replace income. So all you do is have to go in there and take whatever the income loss would be, multiply it by 12, and take that times 5, 6 years, whatever it is, and you show them that they have that block of insurance to protect their loss of income. You're here to protect their mortgage, that if something happens, the loan is taken care of, and they're not using money from their income replacement insurance, their life insurance, to cover their loan. So Jeremiah and Marissa, again, these are the options. Option 1 would be we do 180,000. If you passed, you know, it would pay the 180 to Marissa, tax free. And this would be with a return of premium. It's 121.75 a month. The return would be 29,220. Okay. The other option 2 would be we do the same 180, but we just don't do a return of premium on it. Okay. It's
And with the insurance we
3706.
have, I mean, do we need to get more?
Well, that's a great question. Here's what you want to look at. You had mentioned to me that you had how much coverage outside of work?
What, 100,000?
About 100,000, yeah.
100,000. Okay. I'm just going to go through this exercise with you for a minute. Okay. You bring in $5,000 a month.
Right.
That means if you pass away, she's losing how much a year?
All of it.
100% of it.
100%.
So it's $60,000 that would be missing. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. The loan is 180. So right now you don't even have enough insurance to cover the debt that's on the house to start with. Okay. So here's what I would say to you. Not only do you need to have protection to cover the loan with, but you should have more insurance. Because you typically want to take whatever the loss is, 60,000 a year, in your case that Marissa would lose, and multiply that number by, say, 4 or 5. That would determine how much regular life insurance you should have outside of the loan being covered.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And truth is, if you had 300,000, I would tell you the same thing. Because this would eat up all that money. With that being said, does option 1 look better? In other words, do you like the idea of the return of premium and getting all the money back and trying to pay the house off early? Or are you more just concerned about no return and just know that the house is paid off if you pass?
Probably more on 2.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, and the good
More than
news
just the
is,
payoff.
the good news is if we start here, if we can get your foot in the door and they approve you and you decide that you'd rather be over here, then we can always look at that.
Okay.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Keep in mind that when someone tells you they already have insurance through work, that they don't own that policy. Meaning that a lot of clients, when you go out and meet with them, you'll hear stories how you'll ask them if they have other insurance and they'll say, well, I used to have insurance, but I don't work for this company I was with before. And when I left, I lost my insurance. So keep in mind that I look at the client and I tell them, I only count insurance that you own, meaning you pay for it. It doesn't come out of your paycheck through work. Your employer has no ownership over your policy. That's how you would want to handle that. The next objection you commonly hear that I really want to cover is the old I want to think about it, okay, which is going to be the most common objection in the house that you're going to run into, okay? A lot of new agents really get thrown off with this because they say, well, we want to think about it. Can we have your card? Can you get back with us another time? This is a one-stop sale. In other words, you're typically never going to go back and write up the policy if you don't take care of it on the spot, okay? So here's what I would say. When they say they need to think about it, that's why it's so important at the beginning that you lay the groundwork for the presentation. You're asking them how much income they bring in every month, okay? So you're identifying what the loss looks like. You're finding out how much other insurance they have in place. You're eliminating and creating a situation to where at the end, when they say they want to think about it, you've got a lot of key points that you can go back to and say, hey, you're losing 5,000 a month if your husband passes away, or you're losing 5,000 if, whatever the situation is, you're identifying where the loss is in the house and going back and pointing at those key things that they said to sell. They're basically selling it, they're selling themselves. You're going back and just pointing at new information for them to make a new decision when they say that. And a lot of times that's an objection for the truth. A lot of times it may be they just don't have the money for premium. It could be a lot of different things. So it's, one of the things you can say to help with that is say, listen, if you guys were dear friends of mine, or if they're older clients, I'll say, if you guys were my parents, this is what I would recommend that you do. And this is how I would recommend that you handle this. And just try to get that, people want you to be honest with them. Just tell them the truth. So when they say they want to think about it, understand that they definitely see the need for it, or they would have never invited you into their house. So based on what we discussed, do you guys like the idea of going with option 1, or do you like the idea of option 2 better? We just do the 180 and it's $37.06 a month. You pass, Marissa and the kids are covered. The house will be paid
Now, is this
for.
something we can just hang on to the quote and get your card? Maybe have you just check back with us in a week or something so we can talk about it?
Absolutely, absolutely. My question to you is this, though. If you guys were dear friends of mine, here's what I would tell you. Is it the money, or what is it you're concerned with?
Yeah, it's...
It's the money. I wasn't thinking that it was going to be quite this much.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I would say to you guys. If you're bringing in, your household income is $5,000 a month, okay, and your mortgage payment is $1,607.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you rather pay $37 a month while you have the $5,000 coming in? Maybe we hold off, Marissa, and we don't get you any coverage at this point, but at least get you covered to get your foot in the door and try to get you covered first.
Mm-hmm.
It's $37 on $5,000. You don't know what can happen, and with you two having 2 kids, God forbid if something happened, you have no income coming in. The worst time to go out and find a job is when you just lost your husband. Right. And at least your home would be paid for. Nobody can come in and take it away from you. So why don't we focus
Option
just on
2
this?
Okay.
Could be closer to what?
Yeah.
And that would still give us coverage.
Right, and I have to get you approved. Keep that in mind. Just because you're picking that option doesn't mean you're going to get it. They still have to look at your medical history, your prescription records, the whole works.
Okay.
All right.
So we'll start with this, but I want to leave the door open and you guys understanding. If you decide you want coverage down the road, we can always help you get it later. Okay? Or if you decide, if you get a raise at work or something changes, and you decide, hey, you know what, I think I'd rather have the return, we can always look at it at a later time.
Okay.
That sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yes.
When you meet with a client that's older or has had a lot of health challenges and they have a larger mortgage and the only option for them is a permanent whole life product, how do we present that? How do we make that make sense to the consumer? Just so I understand, you had a heart attack, you said?
Yes.
And that was, you said 3 to 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
How did they handle that? Did you have open heart surgery, or they just put a stent in?
Just a stent.
Just a stent. Have you ever had cancer or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Marissa, how about on your end? Any major health stuff going on?
No.
Okay. Here's what I tell every client when I meet with them. You're in a very unique position, okay? Because at your age, especially with you having a heart problem, nobody's going to want to cover you. And I'm sure you understand that.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to protect anywhere from 10% to 100% of the 180,000 you have, basically. Okay? The goal is to create a bucket of money, so if something happens that you have some protection, because you had told me you had no insurance at all.
Right.
Okay? So what I'm going to do is this. There's 2 types of policies that I can get you into. Okay? One of them is what we call a temporary policy. It's like a term, which means we set up a certain period of time. If you die within that period of time, the insurance company would pay a claim. Here's the disadvantage. If you live past that point, then you lose your coverage and you're right back where you started. Okay?
Yeah.
The other option is we do a permanent plan, which has no end to it. Meaning that if I can get you approved, like if I can get them to accept you based on the health issues you have, you would be able to keep the policy for the rest of your life. It would never expire.
Okay.
Okay? I would rather look at a permanent option as opposed to a temporary option. I'm sure that makes sense to you too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what I would do. The loan is $180,000. I'm going to look at 3 options. And I want you to understand, I can go as high as you want to, but I'm telling you what I would do, what I would recommend for you, based off what when I talk to other people. I would recommend the top option be about 30,000. Okay.
Okay.
Now you might say, now Rob, my loan's 180. I understand that, but we're trying to create a bucket of tax-free cash. If something happens, that Marissa could continue to make the house payments with it. She could use it to refinance the house. Plus, you don't know when you're going to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we'll look at 30,000. We'll look at 25, and we'll look at 20. Okay, for 30,000, it's $181.25 a month. That's a permanent plan. You'd keep it the rest of your life. Okay? If they'll approve you. Keep in mind you have a heart issue, so I don't know how that would go. The other option is we do 25, which would be $148.50, or we do 20,000, which would be $105.70. Okay?
Okay.
So again, option one, if you pass, Marissa gets a tax-free check for 30 grand. She could again use that to keep the house payments paid. You're really trying to protect the equity in the house, Marissa, is basically, because if you owe, you owe 180,000 today. But let's say that Jeremiah dies in 10 years, and let's say the house balance is 100. Well, what if the house is worth 250? You have 150,000 in equity. You could sell the house. The problem is the bank's going to want the payment every month, and you have $5,000 a month now that's missing.
Right.
So this would give you enough money to keep the taxes paid, the principal, and then, keep everything paid until you could sell it, take your equity, and go somewhere else. Okay? So if you did 30,000, it would run you 181.25. Okay? If they'll take you. Option two would be 25. Just again to recap, would be 148.50. And then if we do 20, which I wouldn't go any less than that, would be 105.70. So my question would be, obviously from a budget standpoint and also from a protection standpoint, which of these would make the most sense in your situation?
Based on my pre-existing condition, we're not able to get more coverage than that.
Oh, I
so
can
this
get you
one,
more.
It's just going to cost a lot more.
It's going to cost more. I'm saying I can get you more if you want it. This is what I would probably recommend. Unless you want more, we can look at more.
I mean, I'd see maybe option three,
That's
get it
right.
just enough to
That's what I was thinking too.
cover while things kind of go in transition.
Okay, because your house payment's about $20,000 a year. Okay, to keep things paid. So if you had the 20, that should get you through for 12 months.
Yeah, through a year,
Right.
be able to transition or put the house up for sale.
Absolutely.
Or, yeah.
Now here's the good news: is we're going to call in and do a phone interview. Okay, I'm going to call an underwriting department. I'm going to ask you some questions first, and as long as you answer no to the questions, okay, the way that they would expect, then we'll call into an underwriting team. I'll give them your information, and then I'll hand the phone to you, and they'll do a phone interview. And while they're talking to you, they're going to look at your medical history, your prescription records,
Okay.
the whole works. And here's the good news: in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'll be able to tell you if you're approved or not approved.
Great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
A lot of clients that we meet with are going to have a larger mortgage. They may be in their 50s or 60s. They've had a lot of health issues where a term product just doesn't fit the mold. Okay? The thing to keep in mind is this: when you go out to meet with a client, your goal is to do what I would call creating a bucket of money that if something happens, they can protect the equity in the house. You leave them enough money to make payments for a period of time. This is where a lot of agents really struggle as they go into a house and they think, I can't get them a term product. I can't get them $180,000 worth of insurance. So if it's not that, I can't get them anything at all. Keep this in mind. When you meet with a client, they don't want to know what they can't have. If I go in there and say, listen, you can't get a term product for $180,000 because you had cancer 3 years ago, you're not going to sell anything. You've got to go into the house with this approach. Listen, you're 75 years old. You've had a heart issue in the past. Your wife, you've had some cancer. Face it, insurance companies don't like you at all. So the goal here is to try to create a situation where you can have a permanent policy as opposed to temporary. And that's why when I go through the training, I talk about when you talk to the client, you want to say, listen, there's two types of policies we can get you. The first one being a temporary policy, which is a term. It basically means that if you die within this period of time, that it pays this amount. The bad news is if you live outside that term, then essentially you've wasted all the money you've paid into the policy. Okay? The second type of plan we can get for you, you're saying this to the consumer, would be a permanent plan, which is much like a whole life type product, which basically means you keep the coverage for the rest of your life. So that means that if you live another 20, 30 years, you're not in danger of losing the policy and essentially wasting money. Okay? Almost 100% of the time, the client's going to say, I like the permanent policy, not the temporary one. Okay? So you've got to get your mind wrapped around this when you go out and meet with clients and understand that they know their situation from a health standpoint. They understand that they have a heart issue or they've had cancer or whatever it may be. If they say, for example, they've got all these health issues, I might say, listen, right now your loan is $150,000, but let's say you died in 10 years and the loan was $100,000. That's all you owed on the property, and say that it's worth $200,000. Well, you've got $100,000 worth of equity that needs to be protected. And I would look at the client and say, when you pass and all that income's missing, bad news is they still have to continue to make that payment every month. The bank doesn't care that you lost part of your husband's income. So what you do is you take out enough coverage to cover the taxes and pay the house payment and the insurance until they can sell it, get the equity out of it, and move on with their life. You're going to commonly hear people say sometimes that they want to shop around. Okay? Here's how I recommend that you handle that. When somebody tells you that they want to shop around, I always use the comparison by saying, hey, if we're in Dayton, Ohio right now, if you were to leave and go to the next city, all the adjacent cities to where we are today, the gas prices are the same about anywhere you go. And insurance is really the same also. I'm already here at your house. We can take care of this. I always point out the fact that there's no physical exam, so I don't have to send a nurse out to, draw blood, and they don't have all that hassle to deal with. And I always say reality of it is you have a need here, and I want to do my best to take care of it for you. So let's just pull the trigger and get it done today. So Jeremiah and Marissa, option one, I'm going to look at just yours first. Option one would be $180,000. That means if you pass, or when you pass, Marissa would get a tax-free check for $180,000. It's $121.75 a month. The good news is at the end of 20 years, we'd set it up to refund you back over $29,000, and then you could use that to pay the loan off with ahead of time. Mm-hmm. The second option would be that we don't do any return. We just do the coverage only, meaning if you pass, the house is paid, and that would reduce the premium to $37.06. My question to you would be, from a budget standpoint and also from a protection standpoint, which of these would make the most sense in your situation?
I mean, both of them look fine. I just feel like we need to shop around a little bit and compare our options.
Yeah, I mean, one looks good. I don't know if we're ready to make the commitment, and I know we do want to shop around a little bit and kind of price check and just kind of see if you guys fall on top, or see where you kind of come in price wise. Okay.
So with that, and I understand that, I'm the same way. Let me ask you this question though: if you had to pick one of them today, which one? Like, if you obviously you have to get approved, but if you had to pick one, do you like the idea of return or no return?
Return.
You like that idea?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, here's what I would say to you with the return. I'm a big fan of that, and here's why. You're essentially not wasting any money. You're getting everything back that you paid in, and there's a good chance you're still going to be sitting here in 20 years. Mm-hmm. Okay? Let me tell you something else about insurance, and again, I'm going to talk to you like you're just two good friends that I've known for a long time. If you go buy gas and you know right here in town where we're at, and you drive across town to get gas, that's all about the same, right? It might be 3 or 4 cents different, but they're all about the same. Does that seem fair to you?
The price? I mean, it's hard to know. We haven't really been shopping around and kind of looking at everything.
I mean, does it seem fair in light of the fact that they return everything back?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that part seems fair.
Okay, because I can tell you that I deal with a handful of insurance companies, and if I sat here at your kitchen table, I could show you every single one of them, and they're all going to be within $2 to $3 of each other. Okay? The good news is you don't have to have a physical. So I don't have to send a nurse out here to draw blood. Not that you couldn't pass a physical. My point is you're a busy guy and you don't have to deal with that. I can literally fill out the paperwork, send it to the insurance company, and typically within a week or two we can get an answer. So if you could convince yourself that this is more than fair, okay, and you like the idea of getting the return, let's go ahead and get you approved and see what we can do to try to get you covered. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that quick turnaround time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's, I
Less
mean, the
fuss.
truth is, a lot of people too, they never take care of it.
Right.
Because life gets in the way, and then all of a sudden you look back 5 years from now and you never ended up taking out a policy.
Right.
Right.
So we might as well pull the trigger and take care of it while we're here.
Okay, let's do
Sound
it.
good?
Yeah, we
Sounds
can do
good.
it.
When someone tells you that they can't fit it into their budget, here's how I would suggest that you look at that. So really my question to both of you would be this: from a budget standpoint and also from a protection standpoint, which of these options would work best in your situation?
I mean, if I'm honest, I think it's a lot of money, and I don't know if we're willing to put that kind of money in at this point right now. I mean, the options are both nice, but it's a lot of money to put out and to put into a policy like that.
Okay. Do you like the idea of getting the return back?
I mean, the return's great,
Okay.
but is spending that kind of money every month? I mean, it's a lot.
Well, and let me say this. I mean, the return of premium is a great thing to have, but understand the most important thing here is the fact that if you died tomorrow, this $5,000 a month you have coming in is gone. And I'm sure, Marissa, you'd probably feel a lot safer if you had the loan covered.
Yeah.
Why don't we, let's not work on the return of premium at this point. Let's focus just on getting the coverage for 220. That way, if God forbid something happened to you, at least Marissa's covered. And let's just go in that direction to start with, okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's something we can talk
Yeah.
about, definitely.
Okay. Well, I need you to get your driver's license, and we'll go ahead and go through the application to determine if you're eligible, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
When you meet with clients at the very end of the presentation, obviously sometimes they're going to throw out to you and say, it's just flat out not in the budget. We can't afford it. Here's how I recommend that you look at that. At the beginning of the presentation, you always ask how much income each one of them has coming in every month to identify what the total household income is. So you can identify with them to figure out, can they really afford this or can they not? Are they telling me they can't afford it? I think a lot of times when a client tells you they can't afford it, you've not done the proper job of explaining and kind of going through and picking apart their situation to understand where they're at. And sometimes people truly feel that they can't afford the premium. So your goal needs to be, and anytime they throw up a budget scenario, you need to always focus on what's best for the family. If it means that it's a $30 premium, then that's okay. Our goal is to go out and help the family and put them in the best situation possible. It's not about you and how much you make every time you go meet with a client. It's about doing the right thing for them. Now you've reached a point where maybe you've uncovered some health issues that you're uncertain of how to handle, which product to write. You fall into a state of confusion as far as what to do next. Now would be the time to pick up your phone, call the agent concierge line, and a qualified manager or agent will be there to help you through that process. Okay, you give me one more signature here, right there at the X. That'll be the last one.
There you go.
Very good.
So how long will this take?
So here's the process. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to submit the application. It's, as I said before, it's probably going to take a week or two to get an answer. Okay. My commitment to you is I'll stay on top of it to make sure I'm doing everything I can do to get it approved. All right. But when they receive it, they're going to look at a few things, as I had mentioned to you before. Okay. They're going to look at your medical history. They're going to look at your driving record. They're going to pull up a script check and look at your prescription history. Okay.
Okay.
But everything you've told me, it sounds pretty clean. I don't think we're going to run into any snags. Now, there is a chance the insurance company could call you and do a phone interview. If they do call you, a lot of people get wigged out and call me and say, what am I supposed to say? Just tell them the truth. If they call you, whatever questions they have, just answer them. And The only thing I'd ask you is if they call, please make sure you get back with them as soon as possible.
Okay.
Sound good?
Okay.
There's nothing wrong
Yeah.
if they call.
Okay.
My last question is, are you guys happy with what I put together for you?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I think we're excited. Hopefully we'll get a good response back.
Well,
Yeah.
perfect. Well, it's very good to meet you both. And I'm going to leave you one of my cards. If you know, I'm going to actually leave you a few of them. If you know any other friends or family that might benefit from this service, you're welcome to have them give me a call.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to meet with them and see what I could do to help them.
All right.
That sound good?
Yeah.
It does. Thank
All
you
right,
so
guys.
much.
Well, very good to meet you.
Thank you. Appreciate everything.
too.
Thank you. If I were sitting with you right now one-on-one and were to go through the process of in-home presentation or booking appointments or whatever it may be, the one point that I would want to make to you is this. So many times I find with new agents as they listen to training and they're blown away by it, they say, man, that's incredible the way that you book appointments or incredible the way that you do your in-home presentation. But yet then they go out and do completely the opposite of what we teach. In other words, they go out and try to put their own spin on it and try to do it the way that they're comfortable with. I would encourage all of you to get really uncomfortable. I would encourage you to take the training literally. And as you go out and meet with clients, make sure that you're going through it methodically. You're asking the right questions and you're going through the process. And what you'll find is this. All the training that we provide for you is from, I can't tell you how many appointments we've sat on to come up with the training. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. The good news is for you getting started with us is you don't have to go out and figure it out on your own. We've already done it. So again, I just would challenge you that, as you get started with us, that you just take our training again in a literal sense and go out there and make it happen. And I think that you'll find you'll be very successful with us.